Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving deep into what is, I think, arguably the most significant literary event of the coming year.
Mm.
I'm talking about the first ever memoir from the Booker Prize winner, Arundhati Roy.
And the title alone, Mother Mary Comes to Me. It's provocative.
It really is. It immediately makes you pay attention.
It really does.
Yeah.
And the sources we have give us this incredible roadmap. It's not just, a press release. We have these intimate details about the inspiration, her mother, and then we also have this critical analysis of Roy's writing style itself.
So our mission today is pretty straightforward. We want to give you a full picture of why this book is so important. And to do that, we have to look at the two forces that have, well, always defined her role as a daughter and her role as a very public activist.
That dual identity is everything here. By connecting the personal loss of her mother, Mary Roy, to the political voice she's built over decades, we can see why this isn't just an autobiography.
It's something more.
It promises to be a foundational text, really.
Mm-hmm.
And we can actually analyze the anatomy of her literary voice, drawing just from the news reports, the book excerpts, and some of those reader critiques.
So let's start with the basics, the context. The book, Mother Mary Comes to Me, is set to be released by Scribner next fall. Some reports are saying September 2025 specifically.
And this isn't just a book drop. It's a huge literary event, mainly because of who she is.
Right. At 61, she's more than just an author.
Oh, absolutely. She's a global public intellectual.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, she won the Booker for The God of Small Things, her debut, and became famous overnight.
But she spent most of her career since then writing nonfiction.
Exactly. She's deliberately moved outside of fiction. You have her second novel, The Ministry of Utmost Happiness, but the bulk of her work is these essential nonfiction collections.
Like The Algebra of Infinite Justice or Walking with the Comrades.
Right. And The Doctor and the Saint. Her writing is just fundamentally shaped by these really sharp, often confrontational political observations.
And Scribner's description of the memoir fits that perfectly. They say it traces her life from childhood in Kerala to Delhi. They call it astonishing, often disturbing, and surprisingly funny.
That combination, astonishing and funny, rooted in tragedy, that's her sweet spot. That's the tone she masters.
It really is.
And what's so compelling is that this memoir seems to promise the origin story of that voice. And it all centers on one thing, the death of her mother, Mary Roy, in September 2022.
Okay, so we need to spend some real time on Mary Roy. She's clearly the central subject, almost a mythical figure in her daughter's life and work.
Enthralling subject is the term Arundhati uses, and it's perfect. Mary Roy wasn't just a mother. She was a renowned educator who founded a school in Kerala.
And for anyone who's read The God of Small Things, her mother's life was the basis for the character Amu.
The very book she dedicated to her mother. So the fictional version has been with us for decades.
And we get such a powerful sense of her personality from the sources. Arundhati Roy described her as one of the fiercest, most fabulous people she ever knew. That's a big shadow to live in.
It is, but the historical weight of her life is what makes that word fiercest so meaningful. This is the key detail for you to understand. Mary Roy fought and won a legendary legal battle.
The one for inheritance rights?
Yes, for equal inheritance rights for Christian women in Kerala. It was a landmark case.
Can you just unpack what that means practically?
Of course. So before her, under a 1916 law, Christian women in that region often got just a tiny fraction of their father's property. Mary Roy took that to the Supreme Court.
And she won.
She won. In 1986, the court struck down that discriminatory law.
So she wasn't just a strong personality. She was a genuine revolutionary. She changed the law for thousands of women.
That's the bedrock of her daughter's entire public persona, isn't it? If your mother takes on the establishment and wins, you learn that institutions can be challenged.
And must be challenged.
Right. And even the details around her death are filled with that same defiance.
I remember reading about the funeral. There was some tension there.
A lot of tension. Roy describes a savage history with the church. So the family had to figure out how to have a fitting funeral on their own terms. It was a huge relief, the sources say, that they could hold it on the campus of the school Mary Roy founded.
So they could bypass the church and do it their own way.
Exactly. A private ceremony that honored the life she actually lived.
That sets the stage perfectly for the memoir's emotional core. Let's move from the historical mother to the intimate experience of grief.
And we get this incredibly powerful quote from Roy herself. She says, "I have been writing this book all my life. I mourn her as a writer who has lost her most enthralling subject.
That is just such a writerly thing to say. It's ruthless self-assessment. She's not just mourning her mother, she's mourning her muse.
Precisely. It reframes the whole act of mourning. It's not just filial grief, it's the loss of the creative wellspring. She spent a lifetime observing this person, and now that source is gone.
And even the timing of the death, according to the excerpt, was classic Mary Roy.
Oh, completely. She chose September, that most excellent month, to die, with no advance notice. It was typically unpredictable.
That unpredictability seems key to the grief she describes. Roy writes that the Kerala landscape, the hills, the rivers, it all became associated with a palpable physical pain.
Yes, she says her mother was so woven into that place that she was more present than the sea itself. It's that lyrical, sensory writing bleeding directly from her fiction into her memoir.
What I found so fascinating, though, was the history of this. It wasn't a sudden shock in terms of possibility. This was a 60-year-long conversation about death.
Not at all. It started when Arundhati was just 3 years old. Conversations about death, about wills. Her mother was apparently so preoccupied with it that she rewrote her will almost every other week.
60 years of rewriting wills. That has to create this impossible psychological tension.
And it leads to this concept she writes about in the text, catastrophe complacency.
Catastrophe complacency.
The sheer number of false alarms just led the family to a state where they honestly believed she would outlive them all. It's an incredible idea. You prepare for the worst for so long that you stop believing the worst can happen.
And the power of the excerpt is that contrast, because after all that waiting, when it finally happened, the shock was total.
It was completely fresh. The result of that complacency was she was suddenly, quote, wrecked, heart-smashed. She even says she felt ashamed by the intensity of her reaction.
That feeling of shame at your own grief, despite decades of preparation, that's the paradox of loss, isn't it? She was caught completely off guard.
It shows that no amount of intellectual preparation can shield you from that final emotional reality.
So let's zoom out from that emotional core to the literary voice that conveys it all. What makes her writing so impactful but also so polarizing?
This is where the personal story meets the craft. And if you look at reader critiques, you see this clear split. She is not a neutral writer. Her prose makes people feel things very strongly.
Okay, so let's start with the proponents. What do the readers who love her style point to?
They almost always talk about her beautiful prose. They praise her ability to describe these really complex emotions immaculately without using ornate words.
So it's precision.
It's precision and it's sensory detail. They also say even minor characters are beautifully personified. It creates this immersive, rich world you fall into.
That's the poet in her. But then there's the other side of her appeal, the political side.
Exactly. For a whole other group of readers, her specialness isn't the prose. It's that she is blunt, satirical, fact, accurate, and political. For them, the value is in her courage, her willingness to use her platform to challenge power.
So she's juggling two very different voices, the lyrical novelist and the sharp-edged polemicist. Is that friction what causes the polarization?
I think it is. It absolutely is. When a writer moves from something intensely lyrical to intensely political, you as the reader have to constantly adjust. For her fans, that fusion is genius.
But for balance, what about the readers who just don't connect with it?
That's the other side, and it's crucial. Some readers say they just don't find her work very much striking. One critique was that she tries to show herself intellectual and talented storyteller, but she isn't.
Ouch.
It's a harsh critique, but it confirms that her unique style, which some call profound and others might call, overwritten, is the defining feature of her work. For some, the lyricism is just a barrier.
It's interesting, though, whether people love her for her politics or her prose, the critiques always come back to the way she writes. Her style forces a reaction.
And that intensity is what elevates her. She demands engagement on her own terms, which, were clearly established by the fierce, defiant nature of her mother.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? We started this deep dive with the personal loss of Mary Roy, and we've ended with a look at her daughter's celebrated, controversial pen.
Right.
It seems Mother Mary comes to me as set to be this intensely personal book that grounds this global activist in her most formative, powerful, and demanding relationship.
It's a rare look into the private life that shaped a writer who is both controversial and deeply beloved. It promises to be the origin story of the writer as activist, told through the person she called her most enthralling subject.
And we noted that Mary Roy's life was first filtered through fiction in The God of Small Things. Now her daughter is moving from fiction to fact. So the final thought for you to mull over is this. What new truths, personal or political, will be unlocked when the writer finally sheds that fictional veil and presents her mother and herself as undeniable, complicated fact?